how we can notice these issues popping up in ourselves and those around us. So here is what we are doing today for our mental health check-in. That's really what this is for all of us. It's a Q&A. We have two experts on the line from the National Alliance on Mental Illness and Lines for Life right here in Oregon. The three main topics we're going to talk about is, number one, how is everyone doing? How are you guys doing? If you're watching on KGW.com, on our Facebook, our YouTube, our Twitter right now, please leave a comment. Let us know how you're feeling right now. Ask a question to our experts. We will be taking your questions live throughout this entire show. Then we'll talk about what can we do if we notice that we ourselves are struggling, how can we cope, and how can we help others around us, our friends and family members that we might notice are struggling right now. So Greg, we're going to start back with you again. You are with Lines for Life, which is a suicide prevention group. What is the sense you have been getting from people in this time right now?
Yeah. So thanks for having me. So we're definitely receiving a lot of calls where people are mentioning COVID-19. In fact, I'd say the majority of the calls that come in, people are talking about COVID-19. That is not necessarily the reason why they're calling in. They very often are having just kind of regular stressors that are coming up, whether it's emotional, anxiety, depression, some family problems. But what we're noting is that if it's not in the forefront, it's at least in the background of most calls that come in. So, for example, we often have teens who call in on our youth line, and what might be different right now is that when a youth calls in about having problems with school or whatever it is that's going on, that we're not able to get them to tap into some of the usual things that they might do for self-care. So, for example, going out and hanging out with their friends might not be an option right now for them. So COVID-19 is definitely making it challenging for people to access the things that they traditionally would have done to take better care of themselves.
Absolutely. Seems like everything has changed right now. So even just the ways we take care of ourselves. Chris, you're with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. What's the sense you have gotten from people that have been calling you guys?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, we have kind of two cohorts of folks. You have individuals, families, kids who already had underlying mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, you name it. And what is occurring is all the stress, the accumulation of anxiety, the disruption to daily living, all this uncertainty is taking its toll on people. And we sort of term it as people shelter in place, they're also suffering in place. And so the danger is their conditions are deteriorating, their symptoms are getting worse. And so it's working with that population and trying to figure out how do you stay in some level of stability so you don't get worse. And then you have a whole bunch of people coming forward who otherwise would never have come forward with any kind of symptoms, but it's entirely due to COVID-19 and the impacts. And again, that accumulation of anxiety and stress, stress being a very normal reaction to the disruptions we're encountering, but it's much like a major natural disaster. It's that accumulation over time and the toll it takes on people's mental health. And it really is working with those folks. This is all new to them. It's a mystery. They're very scared. They're uncertain about reaching out. They're worried about being judged. And it's trying to help them to understand this is a very normal reaction. And there are pathways to assistance to help you at least maintain some level of stability until life has some semblance of normalcy.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you both for all of the work that you do. I should have started out with that, for making people, getting rid of the stigma and making people feel like that it is okay. It is okay to pick up the phone. It is okay to look for help and look for resources. And if you're feeling different things in your brain, that's okay. You just have to check in. So what are some of the symptoms that we should be watching out for, Greg, if we're noticing some new feelings of depression or anxiety or anything like that right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things I think that everyone should be aware of, or loved ones should be aware of if they're seeing this and people that they're close with. And that's, I'd start with changes in energy level, any changes in sleep. So if somebody's sleeping much more than they normally would, or they're having problems sleeping. Changes in appetite often can be a sign that, okay, something's going on, something's not quite right. Frequent headaches, persistent worry, perseverating about things that you can't kind of get your brain to stop thinking about. Increased use of drugs and alcohol is definitely something that I think paying close attention to right now in particular. And sort of an overall inability to experience pleasure. So if you're eating a nice meal and you know it's a nice meal, but you're really not enjoying it, you're not appreciating it, that might be a sign that, like, I'm feeling kind of dull right now, and I'm not really feeling in touch with things that normally would sort of spark my brain and make me think, oh, I feel happiness right now. So pay attention to those things, and the earlier you pay attention to that, the better you're going to have a chance to have the energy to say, I think I need to reach out and talk to somebody about this.
And is that what you would suggest? If people do start noticing those feelings in themselves or the people around us, then just reach out, pick up the phone, call one of the resources, one of the organizations that will talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, when people start to feel low, the brain, I think, often tells us that, we don't have the energy to reach out. And the best way to combat these feelings that we get stuck in our head having really is to get them out, to talk about them with someone else, and to just share what your experience is. It kind of takes the power away from it and gets us to where we can figure out how we're going to continue to move forward. So yeah, so we want people to be calling us. We're here 24/7, and we most of our clinicians are working from home, so there's no disruption in service. We're ready to take those calls, and we want you to reach out to us.
That's wonderful. Just knowing that there are resources all times of the day, like you said, 24/7. Chris, you have actually spent some time on the phones with people. You've heard from people that kind of just do want to talk. Isolation is a big thing right now. How are you helping people through that right now?
Yeah, you're right. Isolation is a big thing, and in a crisis line notwithstanding, many of the things, as you notice things, and many of what Greg's identified, we're all experiencing. So is that a crisis? Is that just a normal reaction to a natural disaster, in a sense, which is the closest equivalent? And how do you remedy these things? And one is we have in our society, we don't have the deep social connections we used to have, and renewing some of those through just picking up a telephone, checking in with family, going outside for a short walk, paying attention to your diet. These are all things that can countermeasures to suffering some of the symptoms that are related to what we're experiencing. And yeah, people, one of those, again, is that deepening social connection. And you do that through communication. And we do that as humans through speaking, by and large. And so people call us and they may be looking for resources, but we may be spending 20, 25 minutes on the phone with them, because really what they want is just to get out some of the things they're experiencing. And then we're encouraging different networks to connect. So one of the things that we do, particularly with our regular volunteers who aren't able to come into our office now, is really just hold sessions where everybody gets to check in with one another. And so that's a lot of what we're seeing. One is, I need help. Where do I go in a world where I can't go to my doctor anymore? And how do I do that? And two is just a general sense of, I really need to connect here. And so what I want is, I wanted to talk to someone so that it helps me through this anxiety. And I do want to note, the things we're talking about here, especially for people who are experiencing this for the first time, these are very normal things. They're very common things. We don't recognize all the fact because we don't talk about this as prevalently as we should. It's better. But, we're talking 20 to 30% of the population from 13 years of age to older at any given time under normal circumstances is dealing with something. And now you layer on top of this. And so really what we help people do in our line, spend a lot of time right now doing, is just reassuring people, hey, this is not a atypical reaction to what you're experiencing. So now let's recognize that, and I'll start to help you through this.
Yeah, I would
Absolutely. I
just
mean, oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Chris or Greg.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of times we think that when we're afraid of something, when we have a fear, if we talk about it, it's going to make it worse. It's going to make it real. And what we know is that if you just talk about your fears, it actually takes the power away from them, and it gives you the ability to sort of reason through and talk with other people about, like, okay, how big of a concern is this really? And often we learn that, there are ways to deal with it. We just kind of got to get it from our head out.
Absolutely. And I know for me, because I do have, before the pandemic started, I have depression, I have anxiety, and these are things I learning to cope with and learning what helps my brain get through them. And I know for me, on this past weekend, I had one of those days where I just felt like the entire world was ending for no reason. I just like, but I am lucky. I luckily do have a quarantine partner. My boyfriend is just a few feet off of the camera over there, also working from home. But it wasn't until I actually said the words out loud to him, hey, I guess I'm not doing well today. I guess I just need to sit in the car and cry for a few minutes. And then once I got that out, and then Chris, you were talking about just the simple idea of going outside, going out into nature. I did that. I went on a walk. I took pictures of flowers, and then it was like my brain came back, and the world was okay. It was beautiful outside. I reminded myself of things that brought me joy, and and the world was not in fact ending, but it took me actually saying the words out loud to be able to get through that. So Chris, one thing you have heard a lot is people asking, how do I get a therapist? If I feel like I've gotten to that point and I want to get a therapist, how do I find the right one? How do I find one in the middle of a pandemic? How does that work?
Yeah, and there's no good answer to that right now because everything that we took for granted, we had a system and pathways to care that were very inefficient to begin with. And then you layer on top of it a pandemic and taking industries such as behavioral health clinicians and therapy it was not used to doing telemedicine and everything is virtually like we're even doing right now. Well, they didn't do that. And overnight, they had to create the infrastructure to be able to do virtual appointments over the phone and that. So there's no good answer here, but how do you go about it? Almost in the same way you would have. You reach out, we encourage folks to reach out and start with their primary care physician. One is you want to rule out any kind of medical causes that may be underlying that. You definitely want to start addressing, is this really the body's natural reaction to the stress that we're all encountering? And so maybe I'm not as concerned about that until I see the impacts over a little bit longer period of time. And then your clinics here in Oregon, by and large, are fairly integrated, and so they do have referral networks to get you to therapists that are doing virtual appointments. I will caution folks, right now it's not necessarily easy, so there's a certain persistence that you have to have. But then that's where an organization like mine can come in and help you on that journey, because by and large what we do, we have our helpline, but we have online support groups and we have other services where you connect with peers just like you, right? So if I'm someone who lives with a mental health disorder, I will connect with others who have mental health disorders. If I'm a parent who has children with behavioral health disorders, I'm going to network with other parents. And what we do is really hold each other's hands through that journey, knowing that sometimes it's a long road to get to that therapist. But to really, as a long-winded answer to your question, still stick to your normal pathways, but understand it's going to take a level of patience and persistence. And then what you want to do is find these other avenues that help you kind of maintain until such time as you can reach that help.
Great, thank you so much. So we actually have a question from one of our viewers on Facebook. Connie Metz wants to know, I haven't been sleeping well since the pandemic began. What can I do? And I know for me, that has been something. Sometimes my anxiety will just start, I'll be tired at 10 o'clock. And then when I want to go to bed at midnight, all of a sudden, every anxiety in my brain is there and I can't sleep. So either of you, what tips do you have for people maybe?
So I'll take this one, Chris. So, we talk a lot on the lines about sleep hygiene and the importance of good sleep hygiene. And what sleep hygiene is really keeping routines. So we really encourage people to go to bed at the same time each night and to get up at the same time each morning. And that's hard right now because people don't have the normal structure that they have. that they're used to. So they maybe don't have to get up and go to work at 8 a.m. So they're up at 7 or whatever. But what we know is that if you deviate from that schedule too much, your body and mind get confused. And so you're going to have a hard time going to sleep that night if you sleep too late in the morning, for example. We also talk about, trying to get some exercise during the day really does help a lot. Leaving the house really does, I think, help to alleviate some of those. So if you, for example, lay on your couch all day long and then it's time to go to bed, your mind and body are going to be like, well, wait, I've been laying on the couch all day today. Why I'm not ready to go to sleep. So that's probably not going to work. So try to be as active as you can during the day. And if you're finding that you're having a hard time, so a couple more things. One is like, don't watch TV in bed. We all want to do that. It's comforting to pull out the iPad and just watch Netflix in bed right before sleep, but that actually will make it harder for you to fall asleep when it's time to fall asleep. So really, when you're in bed, before bed, some light reading, then turn the light out after a short period of time and try to go to sleep. And if you're not falling asleep within, I'd say, a half hour or so, then get up, actually get out of bed and go sit somewhere different than in your bed and do a little bit more reading, and then try to go back to bed. And I know that's a tall order because you're tired and you don't want to get up and get out of bed, but it actually really does help. It kind of breaks the cycle, and then hopefully you'll get tired enough from reading for 15, 20 minutes that when you go back to bed, you'll be able to go to sleep.
That really does make so much sense.
If I could add just a little bit around also being mindful of your diet, and understanding the relationship between diet and wellness. In particular, I think we forget the consumption of alcoholic beverages has gone up as we're all trying to cope and in some respects probably self-medicate ourselves. But alcohol inhibits sleep, for example. So just being mindful, don't drink more caffeine later in the day because you're getting up later, right? I mean, there are these kind of things. But I would also add that what people are experiencing in terms of disruption in sleep, certainly more vivid dreams, these are all the body's normal reactions to stress. So what we hope people don't stress out too much about losing sleep, right? And so it's a problem. You want to do good sleep hygiene, but you don't want to be so fixated on the fact that you're having a problem with sleep that you're just exacerbating the problem you're experiencing. So understanding these are normal and that you can address these, but it may not get you back to where you were perfect before the pandemic hit. And so again, forgive yourself a bit when you're experiencing these things.
So much of it comes back to that, just forgiving yourself and saying, it's okay, this is normal, even though it doesn't feel normal at all. But nothing is normal right now.
Yeah, it's a challenge because we keep, we kind of have this hope against hope that we'll go back to some kind of baseline. And if we do, it's a long time coming. So it's trying to find, again, particularly for people who have underlying, those of us who live with mental health disorders already, trying to find ways to adapt, forgive ourselves. When we have a bad day, you know what? That's okay. You get up and then you do it again, and you just do these little things and count your little blessings as coping mechanisms to really help you through this.
Now, you both talked about, if you're inside all day and you're not feeling great, maybe just going outside, leaving the house for a little walk. For some people, more of their anxiety comes because they're stuck at home. And then for others, I've gotten a couple comments of when they leave the house, when they have to go to the store, when they do maybe need to go to the doctor. What are some ways to cope when you do have to leave the house and that's what's stressing you out?
Go for it, Greg.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's certainly something that we're hearing people say is that, like, for some people, it feels like going to Fred Meyer is now the highlight of the day and is like an amazingly fun experience. And for other people, it is, they're really worried. They're worried that, you know, they're not going out in the world much at all, and now everybody's wearing masks, or most people are wearing masks, or the people that aren't wearing masks, they're anxious about those people. And so yeah, I mean, I think that is tough. You know, I know for myself, you know, I wear a mask when I go to the grocery store, and I, you know, use hand sanitizer after I'm done. And so, you know, just taking the precautions that I can take makes me feel some semblance of like um, I'm doing everything I can to stay safe and keep my loved ones safe. Um, but you know, going back to something Chris was saying about being kind to ourselves, I do think there's a lot to be said about not judging ourselves about how we're doing. And so, you know, if you find that if you're thinking to yourself, like, why am I anxious just going to Fred Meyer? That's okay. I mean, give yourself a break and recognize that, like we've all said, there's really nothing normal about this situation right now. And sometimes just doing the best you can is really all you need to do. And so I do encourage people to get out and go out. But, you know, I mean, that could even be just stepping out of your front door and getting some sunshine, you know, walking around your house. I did that myself this morning, and it felt great. So you know, movement is important right now, and if you're somebody who can move, I really encourage it.
I think
And then even
it's
just feeling,
important
oh, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I think it's important also to address something you raised that we didn't touch on, which is people are stuck together. And that in and of itself creates its own conflicts. And as you think about ways to cope with that, you know, it's pausing in your day just to express some gratitude, stopping and doing some breathing, just really simple things that will help people back down from what is a major conflict over a minor thing like how to load the dishwasher. I mean, you know, the conflicts that are going on right now. And then when you start doing complex households where you have kids, you know, that have really complex needs. We've worked with a lot of families where moving to this online learning environment just does not work for the kids, right? There is just no way. And rather than try to stress their way through it, they have just given their family permission. You know what? We're not doing online learning. We're giving up this semester. It's done. And their families are then able to heal themselves. And so it's giving people permission to say, you know what? We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to do what's necessary to take care of ourselves. And just giving yourself again permission as a family stuck together to do those things.
Absolutely. Thank you both for your great answers so far. We're going to give you guys just a quick break for a second, and we're going to bring in our senior digital producer, Jared Cowley, to talk about some of the resources we have on our website right now for anyone thinking about their own mental health. So, Jared, take it away.
Thanks, Cassidy. And thank you, Greg and Chris, for all you do to help people who need support. During the show, I've especially liked what you've said about how this is normal and it affects a lot of people. There's no shame in having depression or anxiety or any mental health issue, and seeking help is a good thing, and we shouldn't be afraid or ashamed to do so, especially during this time or any time. At KGW.com, we do have a lot of important resources to help people who need support. Right now on KGW.com, we have an article for this digital Q&A, and you can see it right there on the website. This video you're watching right now is embedded in the article, so if you want to share this article with someone who needs support, they can open this article and watch the video. Inside the article, we also have links to important resources, including links to Lines for Life, and links to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health. We have links to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, among others. We also have a link to a Reddit AMA that KGW's assistant news director did with 2 experts from Lines for Life on this very topic. And you'll see that this article is on the front of our website right now. But if you're looking for this article and the resources it has days or weeks or even months or years from now, and the article isn't on the front page, you can do a search on our website or really on any search engine for KGW Digital Q&A, and you should be able to find the article. You can also find this video and all of our digital Q&A videos on a number of different topics on KGW's YouTube channel. If you search for digital Q&A on that channel, you'll be able to find all the videos we've done since we started the show a couple months ago. So we do have a lot of resources out there, and I think that we'll probably talk more about resources as we continue the show today. But I just am grateful for information on this topic. I'm grateful for having two experts who can talk to how this is a normal issue that a lot of people are experiencing, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jared, for making it so easy for everyone to find those resources as well. So if you just go to kgw.com and find some easy links to click on, some phone numbers to call. So Greg and Chris, we've talked a lot about how to check in with ourselves, what to do if to be kind to ourselves, to be forgiving to ourselves. What about those around us? So Aaron Eisenschmidt wants to know, he said, I'd like to know what kinds of questions people should ask of those that have mental health related issues around us. And if it matters if the person asking the questions has mental health related issues themselves. So let's start with Greg.
Yeah, so that's a great question. At Lines for Life, one of the things we talk a lot about is just having open and honest conversations with people and not being afraid to ask certain questions that might seem hard to ask. And to know that there's really no perfect way to ask certain questions. What's most important is that you are able to convey to the person that you're talking to that you care about them. That's actually just the basics. So if you're noticing with someone that they seem depressed or anxious, just ask them about it. Most people feel really relieved when someone just flat out says, "Hey, I'm noticing that you seem down." And depending on how what you're noticing, if you have any concerns that they're suicidal at all, we really encourage you to just directly ask the question, "Hey, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself?" A lot of people that we say that to on the crisis line say, "Oh, I'm afraid to ask that question because it's going to introduce the idea, or it's going to make them think, oh, well, I can kill myself." And we know now through years and years of doing this that we're not actually introducing the question by asking that question. And in fact, we oftentimes are saving a life by asking that question, because it really gives the other person, it makes them feel like, well, first of all, it makes them feel like someone cares. But more importantly, it makes them feel like there's no shame in answering this question, because they just asked it very calmly, very directly. And so it kind of gives the person permission to say, actually, I have been thinking about killing myself, or not. Often, many times people will say, no, that's not what's going on for me at all, but I am, feeling sad. You're noticing that correctly. And we just don't hear cases where people are, I won't say never, but we're not hearing where people are angry that somebody asked them that question directly. So really just whatever it is that you're noticing with your loved ones that seems different, kind of some of those warning signs or behaviors that have changed, just ask them. I'm noticing this, and how are you dealing with that? Like, I'm noticing you're not sleeping. How are you dealing with that? And I think the second part of the question was, if you yourself have mental health concerns, I think was the question.
Yes. Yep.
And honestly, that's going to be on an individual basis as far as how comfortable somebody is in disclosing that. But I know from experience that if people are open about their own mental health experiences or histories, so say someone says, I suffer from depression too, and what I'm seeing in you looks familiar to me, that looks like something that I might have as well, that can really sort of break down that stigma and make it a real normal feeling conversation, where it can be kind of a back and forth. So if you're comfortable, just start talking.
Absolutely. We talked about normalizing it for ourselves, for other people. So just being able to openly talk about it. Chris, do you have anything to add on that topic?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. One is, I think Greg touched on this. If you're really concerned about a loved one or a friend, and particularly if you feel like they're at risk of self-harm, the crisis line, suicide crisis line, is there for you as well. So they can help you. We often think a crisis line is just for the person in crisis, and they're the person that needs to call. Actually, if your family, your friend, and you want to get some reassurance about what that engagement strategy should look like because you're concerned, they're there for you as well. The second thing to keep a note is you don't have to problem solve. So because you're concerned about someone, show them your empathy, ask the questions, make your observations, and then go ahead and listen. But it's not contingent upon you to solve the problem. Oftentimes, we want to try to problem solve with people. People are feeling what they're feeling, and what you're there is not to solve the problem. You're there to be supportive. You're there to share that you care, and that if there is something you can do, such as, okay, maybe I'm admitting that I have had suicidal ideation, be able to say, hey, can I connect you to can we call the crisis line, for example? It's not your job to solve their sleep issue. It's not your job to get them to a therapist. It's not your job to make all these kind of suggestions. All you have to do as a friend or loved one is just be supportive, just listen, share that concern. And oftentimes for those of us that live with mental health disorders, that makes a world of difference in us being able to really kind of process what we're going through, and then as a consequence, pursue pathways to help.
Well, and you both have touched on this, it's not by asking the questions and talking about it, you are not the one causing those thoughts. You're not going to make, hey, are you feeling depressed? You're not going to all of a sudden make them have depression or have anxiety. How do we also take care of ourselves when those around us are struggling? What are some important things for us to do for ourselves? Greg, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Chris brings up a great point, which is that a lot of our callers are not calling about themselves. They're actually calling about their loved ones. And so, when someone like that calls, we at the crisis lines try to do a good job of supporting the person who's trying to support somebody else, and trying to offer them suggestions of not only how to help their loved one, but really they're calling and so they're struggling with it as well. And so we talk with that person about, like, okay, how are you practicing self-care while dealing with this stressful thing where your loved one is really struggling. And so we really try to put a lot of emphasis on how do you, if you're almost an emotional caregiver at certain times, and how are you going to get through this. And I think what Chris was saying is right, that oftentimes there's not a clear way to fix it, which is what most of us want to do. We want to be able to tell somebody, like, here's the recipe of how to fix this and solve it. It's really just about listening. And so people that are concerned about loved ones are also sometimes in crisis because they're so worried about their loved ones. And so we want them to call us. And that's what we're here for 24/7.
I think it's important to just practice wellness in general as a caregiver. So, we see this a lot with parents with school-age kids. You see this a lot with family members who have adult loved one living with very serious mental illness, is understanding that things we talk about by general wellness also work for caregivers. And that as a caregiver or somebody concerned, particularly if you're really supporting someone, it's much like the analogy being, when you're on an airplane and, the oxygen is gone and the masks drop, what do they instruct you to do? Put it on yourself first before you put it on your child. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, you won't be there to care for your family or loved one. And it can be as simple, I was on an exercise the other day where they helped us practice 4-second breathing, right? 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds, 4 seconds out. And something as kind of stupid sounding as that and simple actually has profound impacts on the stresses we encounter. And so it's these simple things that you need to practice yourself if you're going to be able to successfully support a loved one.
Yeah, just remembering to breathe seems so obvious, but it's a thing that you have to remember sometimes. Are there any other quick or little seemingly simple things that we can do to cope, if we're in the middle of the day and we all of a sudden are feeling super anxious or super sad, little ways to reset. You talked about going outside. We've seen some people commenting that they're also going out and taking some pictures of flowers, working on a puzzle, snuggling with their cats. What other little simple things can people do that we might not think of, even though they might seem obvious?
I think it's just remembering moments, just stop, right? Take a breath, enjoy that photo. I mean, we at our house, we had some birds starting a nest under our eave. And normally I'd be thinking, wow, this is really going to be annoying, and I'm going to be cleaning up a mess all summer long. And yet I find myself watching these birds go back and forth as they get food and other forage to build their nest. And that simple moment in the morning when I watch that and the joy it actually brings. So it's finding those kind of things, knowing that they're going to be very small blessings and little moments. But those are, I think, and we're finding this with our callers as well. Finding those things will be critical to your ongoing wellness, particularly as this goes on and on and on without an end date certain for us.
Yeah, another thing that we're really encouraging people to do is sort of limit their media, sometimes social media, and news consumption. We're in an interesting time right now because this is an election year. And we're also everyone's watching the news, trying to figure out what's going to happen with COVID. When's the vaccine going to come out? When can we travel? When's the economy going to get better? All these things that we're all really curious about. And I'm not someone who says like completely check out, because I think information can be great for our mental health, but we're definitely hearing from a lot of people who can't seem to figure out how to turn it off. It's almost becomes like an obsession to keep watching the news cycle over and over, waiting to hear answers, and there just aren't answers coming out yet fast enough. And so trying to kind of pull back from some of that news consumption, and even social media, which I think can be a great connecting tool. I mean, I know I've connected with people even during this COVID stuff that people I haven't heard from in a long time, which has been great. But if you're involved in some social media that gets political all the time, that can be a real downer. So really trying to find other ways to fill your time that are positive. And again, like we've said multiple times, for me, going outside has been the best remedy.
Absolutely. I know for me, the first couple of weeks of the stay-at-home order, when I started working from home, my anxiety levels went through the roof because there was so much new information about the virus that seemed like it was coming all the time. And so it felt like if I stopped looking at my phone for 2 minutes, something was going to change and I wouldn't have seen it. And then, oh my gosh, now I'm going to die. But then after a couple of weeks, when I realized, okay, I think I have enough information, like you were saying earlier, Greg, I know that I'm going to wear a mask when I go somewhere. I'm going to use my hand sanitizer. I'm going to wash my hands before I go. And when I come back home, and not touch my face, and I'm going to do everything I can that's in my control. And I know enough information, and maybe, obviously, we're KGW, we are a news station, we're putting out news so many times a day, but you can always go to the website. You don't have to watch every single minute. You can tune in when you want. And so for me, that's been a big thing, just remembering that I can maybe not look at my phone the first 30 minutes of my day. That's been hard for me to do, but I'm trying to practice it. It's difficult. I mean, the screens are everywhere, right? We got one comment from Brian Nelson. He says he's been playing a lot of video games, and for him, he's enjoying it because he says he's playing a huge backlog of games that he didn't have time to play before. So that can be good. Speaking of sitting on the couch and watching the screens, Jordan asked, how do you get motivated when the couch is like a magnet, just staring at you, sucking you in? How do you motivate yourself?
That's a $64,000 question. It's not, look, as someone who lives with this stuff, it's not easy. And so you try to find, and Greg can probably address the clinical side. The practical side of it is, at some point, you just try to do it. And if you don't do it, you try it again, right? And then you have an understanding that is a powerful magnet. And then, give yourself permission to think, okay, is there some way I can incentivize myself? Does that mean I ask for help? Do I go to a trusted friend or family member who I'm quarantined with and says, look, I'm struggling getting off of this thing here. Force me to go for a walk, right? I mean, you just start thinking of these strategies to help you do something you want to do. And then understand it's a little victory that you're after, not a big victory, right? It's not get off the couch and be off the couch all day. Maybe it's 5 minutes of exercise. And so it's, don't set yourself up for failure, because if you do, you'll fail. And then you may give up, and that's not what we want to do. And then, as I said, for the clinical stuff, I'd defer to Greg, because there's probably better advice than the practical one I'm giving.
No, I don't know. I don't know if there's a clinical solution to that, but because it's something we all struggle with. I mean, I'm a big believer in structure. When you can put structure in your life, I think that helps people to feel like they've got a little bit more self-control over situations. So, I think for a lot of people, exercising first thing in the morning is really, if they don't do it right away early on, they're probably not going to get to it later during the day. So set, like Chris was saying, set a realistic goal. So if you really want to start moving, say, okay, starting tomorrow morning, I'm going to set my alarm and I'm going to get up, whatever time it is that you get up, and I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk, and let that be the first, the first thing you do. I know for myself, when I have gone, I've gone on longer walks during this time than I ever have in my whole life, actually, and it has been the single most important thing for my mental health that I've done. And I see the world differently when I'm out walking than I do when I'm driving or certainly sitting in my house. So yeah, I mean, I think it's about trying on new things.
Yeah, and understanding. So I love hearing Greg. He goes on like, I can't stand walking. I hate it. So I have to find something else. And it's finding that thing that gets you off of that couch, gets you, as Greg said, into a structure, doing something, whatever that is for you, that helps you break that pattern on the couch. And it's going to be different for everybody. So if it doesn't work for you, if you're like me and walking is like, oh man, what a labor. Again, find something else, right? Keep trying until you find that thing that really kind of gives you that relief from what you're trying to find relief from.
Yeah, and like Chris was saying earlier, if you can have a sort of an accountability buddy, like somebody that you can say, hey, I really want to start doing this. Let's check in tomorrow and see if we both did it. Let's come up with a goal that we both have, and let's check in and see if we both did it. That sometimes can be motivating enough.
I love that. I know for me, it's, I have friends that will we don't even talk on the phone, but we'll talk via Instagram story, like, oh, look at the workout you did over there. Oh, now I'm inspired to go do a little workout, even if it's 5 minutes or whatever it is. We have another question from Rebecca. She wants to know, how do you get help if you don't have insurance?
That's tough. All right. So, one is we really encourage people, if they're unemployed in particular and they're uninsured. Oregon is one of the few states, about half of the states have expanded their Medicaid. So you may be eligible for the Oregon Health Plan. So go online and apply and see. If you don't have insurance and you're in crisis, particularly in the Portland metropolitan area, we do have a walk-in clinic, Cascadia, on around Southeast 42nd and Division. Doesn't matter what your insurance is, non-insurance, go seek help and have those interventions. Then you cobble together, you can come to an organization like mine, where essentially you connect one-on-one or in small groups with people who are experiencing exactly what you're going through. So the symptoms you're experiencing, sharing that with others and learning coping mechanisms is another potential avenue. And again, for those who have lost employment, in particular, if you're not eligible for Medicaid or Oregon Health Plan, you may be eligible for a heavily subsidized insurance premium through the insurance marketplace. And so you might be able to get some coverage that way, but it really is tough. This is a problem we haven't really been talking about because we've been mired in the crisis, is what's coming is that people are losing access to insurance, which means the services that they would normally avail themselves of may not be there. So how do you reconstruct what we do to help people like that? But I would encourage the questioner also to reach out to an organization like mine at the helpline, and we might be able to walk through what kind of resources that she needs, even though she doesn't have insurance, and try to get her to those resources.
Amazing. Thank you guys again for all of the work you do, connecting people with resources, making them feel better. Do you want to point out in our article on kgw.com about this mental health check-in Q&A that we're doing right now, we have a lot of resources in there, including a link to how to apply for Medicaid. There's also an article on our website about Cascadia, and it's all linked right here on the front page of kgw.com in this mental health check-in article right now. So you don't have to go do it right there. It will be there all day. You don't have to do it right this second. Now you guys have both talked about how we won't be getting back to normal, whatever that means, anytime soon. However, depending on where people live, what parts of Oregon or Washington, wherever people are watching from, things are starting to open. Different counties are starting phase 1, starting to open back up. And that I'm sure will cause a lot of anxiety for people and stress. What can we do when things start to open back up? Maybe we have to start leaving the house to go to work. We are going to get our haircut. Maybe that is super stressful. What tips would you guys have for people coping when we do start to go back to normal? Or a new normal, different levels of normal.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, we're encouraging people to either look at the CDC website or the Oregon Health Authority website to stay most up to date on sort of universal precautions around things like this. So I mean, you want to be educated about if you decide to go to the grocery store wearing a mask, basic things like that. Yeah, that's a tough question.
I think it's understanding that none of this is going to feel the same, or it will be rare that any of this feels the same. And just sharing an anecdote, I was on a phone call with the behavioral health director for the state of Oregon, and we were both sharing our experiences walking into a grocery store where there were more people than we thought was prudent. And, we're wearing masks, everybody's wearing masks. And we shared the story. We both turned around in our respective stores, right, totally separately, and got out of there. And 3 months ago, I could never imagine feeling that level of anxiety just by entering a store. And so I think that the biggest thing, as Greg said, is consuming good information, not looking to social media and conspiracy theories and those kind of things. Kind of understanding there are places where there's good information that's the best knowledge we have available, and trying to absorb that knowledge, putting that into practice when you do venture out, and then understanding none of this is going to feel the same way. And you raise a good point. People are going to start going back to workplaces where it's going to be uncertain, is that workplace really safe? And we're going to have to confront that in some fashion. But I don't know that we have tips or real answers to that, because we've never really encountered that before. So some of this we will have to muddle through.
Right, and just as you guys have kept reminding people, it's not normal. We're not going back to normal, and so just because one thing goes back to what you were doing before, it doesn't mean stop your self-care, stop checking in on the people around you. Right? I mean, just keep doing the same things that you are already doing while you're at home. We're going to wrap up in just a couple minutes here, but is there anything else you want to make sure either of you to share with our viewers right now who might be going through something or have people around them struggling right now, or any resources that you guys have that we did not mention yet?
I would just say, we talk a lot about social distancing, and at Lines for Life, we actually talk more about social connection and physical distancing, and how incredibly important it is right now, more than ever, to not be socially distant from loved ones. and to try to find ways to connect that are safe. So if you're someone who's struggling yourself, reach out to people that you can. And if you don't have anyone to reach out to right now that you feel comfortable, call us. Call us anytime. And if you're someone who is doing really well, you feel like, hey, I'm doing all right during this, pull out your phone and go through your contacts and think about the people, your neighbors, friends, family that might be having a hard time right now, because really staying connected during this abnormal, strange, and challenging time is one of the most important things that we can do to combat getting through it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think looking for opportunities to deepen social connections, but understanding if you really are experiencing despondency or anxiety or other symptoms that are really interfering with your ability to kind of navigate daily living, it's going to feel like an insurmountable task to reach out, but do it. Lions for Life is there, NAMI's there. There are a number of different resources, friends, neighbors, family members. Those of us who live with these things understand how big of a hurdle that feels like when our symptoms are at their worst, just to acknowledge we're having a problem and actually do something simple like reach out. So it isn't necessarily an easy thing to do, but do it. We're there and we understand what you're going through and can help you through that.
Absolutely. And we were just showing so many resources on the screen from NAMI, from Lines for Life. And the amazing thing that I've learned from you guys is that, well, I've learned a lot of amazing things in the last hour talking to you guys, but there are separate types of resources. You have the senior loneliness line, you have the crisis line if you are in that moment of crisis and really need help in that moment. There's the teen line, so it really can differ age groups, everything like that can play into it as well, right? And there's different resources for each group of people.
Yeah, there are a ton of resources out there, and they're all by and large peer-based. So, if you're a teen, you will be texting with other teens. If you're a senior citizen, you're going to be talking probably to other senior citizens. We have a resource called Reach Out Oregon. It's for parents and caregivers with school-age kids with behavioral health issues. You will be talking to other parents. And in our world, that peer interaction has so much therapeutic value that it's immeasurable. And so there is something out there generally that may be helpful for you.
Greg, anything to add? Just make sure I don't leave you out there.
No, I think I've covered all I've got.
Amazing. Do you have any kind of message you just want to share with people, for everyone still watching right now, just a message of hope, something to keep in mind as they go about the rest of these days?
Well, we're sharing with a lot of our folks, and again, we work with a lot of people who have underlying, they've already had a mental health condition, is hanging on is okay. We don't have to be optimistic, pie in the sky, bluebirds of happiness. That this is something that it's okay to endure, to have bad days and good days, and that what we're all trying to do is support one another to the end that we hope comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think the only thing
Absolutely.
I would add is just that, we are hearing on our crisis lines, we're hearing incredible stories of resiliency, and we're hearing all kinds of really creative things that people are trying or doing or connecting with others for the first time. And so, so I think we've said connection, if you can make it, whether it's with us at a crisis line, or with others, that's it's been really cool to see.
And you both talked about even just, picking up the phone to someone that maybe someone you haven't seen or talked to in years, and remembering that really everyone is in the same, we're all at home right now. We're all doing these, even live television is now done via our webcams on our computer. I keep thinking, I can call anybody as long as you remember what time zone they're in and that you're not going to wake them up in the middle of the night. Like everyone's doing the same thing, and they all have time, and they'll probably answer the phone so you can check in with everybody. So thank you so much again, Greg and Chris from the National Alliance on Mental Illness and Lines for Life. Thank you everyone who's watched and comments and shared with us on this mental check-in mental health check-in, how you are doing right now. Again, you can always find the links and the phone numbers to all of those helpful resources at kgw.com. It's on the homepage right now, and we will be back with you for another KGW Digital Q&A next Thursday at noon, same time, same place, except for it will be from Galen's house next week. So I'm Cassidy Quinn from KGW, and from all of us here, have a wonderful day. Do something to be nice to your brain. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassidy.